It is the season of the E46. This is kind of the last major scheduled project I've got for this season. This thing's a 99 328i 4-door, 5-speed. It's got some stance installed, it's got some sick AC Schnitzer mirrors, weird ZHP bumper, Euro fogs, and a really bad clutch. I drove this thing out here from my house and the clutch is so bad. You can pretty much do 70 miles an hour on the highway in fifth without slipping, but beyond that, nothing. I think he's been limping it along with a bad clutch for just over a year. And it's time to uninstall it. So it's a pretty straightforward job. I've showed you guys pretty much all the steps of this in engine swap videos of past, but may as well go over it again. Never really hurts because I don't have a standalone video of a clutch install for one of these cars. So step one, get it off the ground. Hopefully your car isn't stanced. It'll make it a lot easier than this was, getting this thing on the lift. I'm just gonna get out the rest of the way here and then show you kind of what we're working with underneath. And then we'll start probably with the exhaust studs on the bottom. If you have a Southern car, it shouldn't be too bad. If it's like this, and I suspect you're gonna have a lot of rust, so we're gonna have to hit it with a blue wrench or an induction heater or something like that. But I'm gonna get my gloves on, get a beer, and let's do this. So, depending on the year of your car, you're either gonna have a aluminum or a tubular steel cross member like this. It's a bunch of 16 millimeters. Zip those off. Just gives you a little bit more room for the engine to flex back and forth. And then we've got the exhaust hardware, which is not looking too good on this car. Definitely gonna hit it with the heat before I try to take these off. They're originally 15s. A lot of time they're rusted down to 14 millimeter. Oh my. Exhaust, beyond that, just a whole bunch of 13s in the middle. And then in the back, typically, it's a 13 on each side of the hanger. This car has a catback on it, which is a little surprising. And then clutch slave cylinder, which is two 13 millimeter nuts. You can take that out at any time. Pulls out of the trans backwards, and then you can just let it dangle. Just make sure not to touch your clutch pedal while you're doing that. And then we'll move on to the aluminum heat shield, the drive shaft, guibo, rear trans mounts, then bell housing bolts, trans removal. There's lots of stuff here and there. But step one for me is going to be heating up these exhaust downpipe nuts and then getting my rattle gun on there and seeing if we can make them dance. If not, we're going to have a lot of hammering to pound the studs out, which is not fun. So always use a lot of heat if they look like this. Well, a lot of heat, but we're finally out of there. Center support bearing has definitely been replaced at some point. All right, next steps for me are gonna be all the 13s on the back of the K-member here, the outers specifically. 18 millimeter fasteners here on the guibo. I usually use an impact and a wobble and then a wrench on the back side. You can take them out completely off if you feel it's going to give you the extra room that you need. And then of course the two 13 mils on the slave cylinder are right up in there, which I talked about earlier. And I still actually have yet to take off this brace, so I'll probably do that too. But as I get to it, once you've got all of the drive shaft side bolts out of the guibo, you don't have to take all 6 out. Then you can drop the two 13s on the CSB and zip tie the drive shaft out of the way. I usually zip tie it to some of these lines just to keep it out of the way of the transmission coming down. If you're doing a swap, then you can just remove the drive shaft entirely, but most people won't be doing that, so hence the multiple options. Lots of bolts. So there we have it. Drive shaft zip tied out of the way. Shifter linkage circlip out. Bitch clip out. And now we can see our starter bolts, upper bell housing bolts, lowers, braces off now, and one to not forget, there's a little 10 millimeter right there in the front. That has tripped me up more times than I care to admit. All right, bell housing bolts next. I usually start with the hardest ones. So that would be the one, sorry guys, back there. That one's the hardest. That one's easy. Those two are easy. The big guy over here, he's pretty easy. All the little guys on the bottom are pretty easy. That front 10 actually kind of sucks a little, but loosen all those up. And then if your car is an original manual, take off your electronic loom for the reverse lights. Let's sort of get that up out of the way. I should bring it all the way over and let it dangle, just so I don't get her trapped in anything. But I'm gonna get my E-Torques and start cranking away on those. Well, this very, very rarely happens, but I think I might be bested by this car. Well, because I have no interest in removing the engine and transmission from the car to deal with this. I was able to get the first most difficult fastener out without too much issue, although I noticed massive torque. The second fastener, however, was a little bit too tight. The E12 started to slip, so I put an extractor on there. That started to slip, so I got the next size smaller extractor, hammered it on, and it still wouldn't come loose. So now it's rounded from the smallest size extractor. There's really nothing I can do without removing the engine and trans from the car at once and dealing with it outside of the car. I don't even want to try the rest of the bolts at this point, just in case something like that happens again. This is really rare. I've worked on, as you guys know, dozens and dozens and dozens of these cars, and I've never had a fastener that tight on a transmission. It's an unfortunate location too, where I really can't do anything about it while it's in the car, I don't think. I'm fairly certain I cannot get a Sawzall back there. I suppose I should try. That's too bad. Well, it's actually another day. I've been brainstorming what the heck to do. I don't really want this clutch job to turn into an engine out service when it doesn't need to, just for so many reasons. So, I was realizing that the standard 12-inch Sawzall blades I've got, they just won't reach back there. So I went home, got my favorite Lennox blades, took two of my best blades and I welded them together, which is a little bit silly, but honestly, I go back here and I set the blade where I need it. And I'm sorry that it doesn't show up very well on video, but there's enough exposure here with the 24 inches where I can get that in a Sawzall. So if I'm careful, I might actually be able to cut straight through that bolt, and I might not have to deal with it until the transmission's out. So I'm gonna give this a go. Now if this comes out, I'm gonna go for the rest of the bolts and try to get the trans off tonight. Then I'll be motivated to finish this thing up tomorrow. Keep your fingers crossed for me, guys. I hope this works. Oh my god, guys, it worked! The only modification I had to do was the Sawzall blade used to be angled this way. I cut it to angle that way. We got a good amount of teeth on there, and I just let her buck. But we're good there. So, I'm very excited, understandably. Gonna get the Sawzall off of here, bring the car back up, get my sockets back out, and see if I can get the other bell housing bolts off, or see if they're gonna fight me as hard as this one did. Well, I got all the big ones. I'm leaving our little 10mm and the 3 small E-Torques. Oh, you focus. You get the idea. For tomorrow, just because I don't want the trans to work itself loose, I had to cut 2 of the big M10 bolts, which is just ridiculous. So I'll try to back them out of the block once the transmission's off. If we can't do that, I'm just gonna leave it be, and he can deal with it later if he wants to. Being down a couple of bolts isn't the end of the world, but man, if this isn't a lesson that tells you not to use an impact on your bell housing bolts on an aluminum block with a steel bolt, I don't know what is. This one night clutch job is turning into an absolute nightmare. But we should have this all done tomorrow, and we did not have to take the engine out, which is stellar. So stay tuned for the finish up here. We'll get there. Also, the O2's here. Whee! So the transmission's off. There's bolt number 1, and there's bolt number 2. Should cut through the bell housing just a little bit. But it's out. Stupid thing. Ugh. Looks like I'm probably gonna need to do a rear main seal, which I hope I don't have to because I don't have one of those here. But I'm gonna take the pressure plate off, take a look at the clutch disc, and this does not look like it's original to the car, so we'll see if there's a date code on it. I don't know. Everything went smoothly. I forgot to take more video after we got the trans out, but if you don't remember how to do that, just go watch some of my other swap videos. Hopefully it starts. Yup. Yay.